The ropes had been strung since sundown. He counted them from across the square. 7. Each one looped tight at the crossbeam and left to hang, not yet bearing weight, not yet anything but rope. The scaffold was old wood, dry and grey, the kind that had seen this before and had stopped having opinions about it. He stood there for a long time. The night air smelled of wood smoke and horses and the flat, dry smell of the road. No moon, just the scaffold and the stars and the deep dark between buildings. The town had gone to bed with the curtains drawn. The few lamps still burning gave enough light to see by, and not enough for anyone behind them to see out. Nobody was watching. Nobody wanted to see this part. Only the other part, the part that came with daylight and a crowd and the kind of silence that a lot of people make when they are waiting for a sound. He crossed the square and pulled his knife. His hands were steady. He had done harder things. 7 figures were bound to the posts beneath the beam, roped at the wrists, at the ankles, each line run through iron rings set flush into the wood. They were large, all 7 of them, even the smallest, even the one at the far end, who had gone still in a way that was sleep or close enough to it. Large the way stone is large, the kind of size that doesn't make itself known until you are standing next to it, and suddenly aware of how much space a body can take up. He started with the nearest. The knife was good. The rope was not new, but not frayed either, and it took 2 passes on the first knot and 1 on the second. Then the figure's wrists came free, and they drew their arms in slowly. The way you move a thing you are not sure still works. He moved to the next post. One of them spoke, low, almost nothing. "Why?" He did not answer. He worked the blade under the next loop and sawed. "You don't know us?" "No," he said. He kept cutting. The square stayed empty around him. No door opened. No lamp shifted behind its glass. He worked his way down the line, post to post, knot by knot, wrist and ankle. Some ropes were tighter than others. One had been wet at some point and dried stiff. He took his time on that one. He did not rush. The last rope fell. He stepped back. All 7 were standing now, more or less. 2 had an arm across each other's shoulders. One was still on his knees, pressing his hands flat against his thighs, working, feeling back into the fingers. They were looking at him. He was looking at them. He said nothing. There was nothing to say yet. The square was dark, and the morning was hours off, and nothing had been settled between them. That was what it felt like. Not finished, not started. Just the dark, and the question of what happened next. He was wrong about that part. By the time the sun came up, things had changed in ways he had not planned for, and would not have believed if someone had told him the night before. But that was the night before. 7 pairs of eyes were watching him in the dark, waiting to see what he did next. So was he. He had come to the homestead the way he came to most things, alone, without much ceremony. That had not always been true. There had been someone once, a woman, married to him for 11 years, who had known how to make a quiet house feel like it had people in it, even when it was just the 2 of them. She died in the 3rd winter on the property, one of those winters that came in hard and didn't let up. The house got very quiet after that. He did not try to fill it. He did not talk about any of it. There was not much to say about it that the years had not already said better. After that, he kept himself busy. The fence line was the first thing. A 1/4 mile of it, sagging or broken outright, posts heeled over in the dirt, wire gone slack and rusting. He fixed it board by board and wire by wire, working from the north end south, finishing sections and moving on. The roof came next. The well rope, the barn door that had hung wrong on its hinges for as long as he had owned the place. He fixed things because things needed fixing and because his hands needed somewhere to go, and the land was large enough to keep them occupied for a long time if he let it. The neighbors stopped coming around after a while. He understood that. He had not made it easy for them. He was good with his hands. He was good with the land, too, in the way that men become good at a thing when they have done it long enough to stop thinking about it. He planted in the spring and harvested in the fall, and did what needed doing in between. He did not expect the land to be easy. It never was, and he had learned a long time ago that expecting otherwise only made the hard days harder. He kept his head down. He worked. The seasons came and went, and he worked through them. Some days that was enough. Most days it was all there was. He kept a stone on the windowsill above the kitchen basin, flat and smooth, grey, the kind of grey that is almost blue in certain light. He picked it up each morning and set it back each evening. He did not think about doing this. It was just something he did, the way a man breathes, the way a fire needs feeding. It sat there like it belonged, which it did. Sometimes he thought about where it had come from. Mostly he did not. He had ridden into town that Tuesday for fence wire and a bag of cornmeal. Not for anything else. He had not known about the square. He had not known about the ropes. He saw them on the way back through. 7 large figures roped to posts in the square, the scaffold already up, the crowd already gone home to wait for morning. He pulled his horse up. He sat there for a long time. He was not a man who made decisions fast. He turned it over the way he turned everything over, slow and from all sides. And when he had finished, he got down from the horse and tied it to a post at the edge of town and walked back across the square. He already knew what he was going to do. He had known since he stopped. Not a brave thing. Not a planned thing. Just the only thing. The town had made up its mind about them before anyone asked many questions. 7 Orcs had come through the valley 3 weeks earlier, travellers by the look of them, moving east along the old trade road. They had stopped at a homestead 2 miles outside town to ask about water. The man at the homestead said they had threatened him. He said they had taken one of his horses. He was a frightened man, and he was missing a horse, and in his fear, the 2 things had become the same thing in his mind. Nobody looked very hard at whether they were the same thing, because there were 7 of them, and they were very large, and the town had been looking for a reason to make a point for a while now. The arrest took half a day. The trial took less than that. Nobody sent for anyone. Nobody waited. The sentence came down the same evening, and by the time the sun set, the ropes were up, and the 7 were bound to posts in the square, hands behind them, ankles lashed, and the town went home for the night, satisfied that the morning would take care of the rest. It was a town that liked things resolved. It did not like loose ends. That was what he had ridden into. He had stood at the edge of the square and looked at them for a long time, and then he had walked across it with his knife, and the rest had followed from that the way things follow when a man stops arguing with himself and starts moving. He had not felt brave about it. He had not felt much of anything yet. The cutting did not take long. He had gone down the line, post by post, wrist and ankle, and somewhere in the middle of it, one of them had spoken, just a word or 2, and he had said 1 word back, and then he had gone back to cutting. The last rope fell. He stepped back. All 7 were standing now. They were very large. He was not. And standing there in the square with the 7 of them free and close, he was aware of that in a way he had not been while he was working. Not a frightened feeling. Something harder to name. One of them stepped forward. The tallest. The one who had spoken. stopped a foot from him and looked at him. He did not step back. That was all that passed between them in the square. A long moment of that, and then he turned and walked toward the road. After a moment, they followed. They went single file in the dark, him in front and the 7 behind, none of them speaking. The road was dry and the night was clear, and the only sounds were their feet on the ground, and, once, something moving in the brush off to the left, and then quiet again. The homestead was 4 miles out, far enough that he had time to think through what he had just done. He thought about it for most of those 4 miles. He turned it over and looked at the parts of it, and set it down. He did not arrive at any conclusion that he had not already reached before he cut the first rope. He had done it. The rest was still to be determined. The gate appeared out of the dark ahead of him, the shape of it familiar even at this hour. He had not made a plan for what came next. He pushed the gate open. He went through. He left it open behind him. After a moment, the sound of their feet on the dry ground stopped. He did not turn around to see if they had come in. He just went to the house and put a lamp on and left the door open as well. The 7 came through the door one at a time, ducking under the frame. He had not watched them do it. He had already gone to the shelves and started pulling things down. 2 loaves of bread, stale at the edges, a half wheel of salt cheese, a crock of dried beans, a jar of something pickled he had put up in the fall. He set it all on the table and stepped back and let them look at it. He knew it was not enough. 7 of them, and not close to enough, and he knew that as well as he knew anything. He did not apologize for it. They looked at the food. Then the tallest one sat down at the table. It was a careful movement, watching the ceiling, and the others read it and followed. Some at the table, some on the floor with their backs against the wall. The fire threw their shadows up behind them, and the shadows were very large. The house was full in a way it had not been in a long time, smaller now in an obvious way, but also warmer, which he had not counted on. It felt strange. It did not feel bad. He was not sure what to do with either of those things. He sat down across the table and pushed the bread toward the middle. He did not ask if they were hungry. He just pushed it. They ate. Not all of them, and not much, but some of them broke off pieces, and the cheese went around, and nobody said anything about it. He ate a little himself. He was not sure when he had last eaten. Nobody spoke for a while beyond that. The fire was getting low, and he got up and put another piece of wood on it, and came back. The lamp made a small circle of light on the table, and everything outside it stayed dark. Then the tallest one looked at him. "Why?" they said. Not angry, not grateful. Just the word again, the same one from the square, asked in a different room. He was quiet for a moment. He did not say things until he knew what he meant by them. "I saw what they had you down for," he said. "Didn't look right to me. I could do something about it, so I did." The tallest one looked at him carefully, then at the others around the room, briefly, then back. "We can't stay here." "You can stay until you figure out where you're going," he said. "After that, it's up to you." A pause. "And when they come looking." "They will," he said. "I can't stop that. I won't say anything about where you went." "You don't know us," they said. "No," he said. "Didn't seem to matter much." The tallest one was quiet for a long time. "Agreed," they said. He nodded once. He did not know what else to say to that, so he did not say anything. He got up from the table. He took a folded blanket off the chest by the wall and set it on the floor near the hearth. He looked around at them. "There's one more in the back room, if someone needs it," he said. Then he went to bed. He lay down in his clothes and set his boots against the wall and stared at the ceiling for a while. He was tired in the way that settles in the chest as much as the legs, the kind that comes after a thing you knew was going to cost you something. From the other room came sounds he could not quite make out. Low voices. Something shifted. A long quiet after that, with just the fire underneath it. He did not get up to lock the door. That was the whole of his answer, if they wanted one. He was asleep before he finished deciding whether he had done the right thing. He woke to the sound of feet. Not one set. Many. More than he could count from the sound alone, low and rhythmic, coming from the roadside of the property. He lay still for a moment and listened to make sure of what he was hearing, and then he got up. He went to the window first. The light was just starting at the edge of the sky, grey and thin, the way it is before the sun has quite committed. What he saw on the road made him stand still, long enough that the cold came up through the floor into his socks. He pulled his boots on and went out. The 7 were already awake. 2 of them were standing in the doorway when he came through the main room, and the others were on their feet. Nobody said anything. He walked past them to the door, and out onto the porch and down the steps. At the gate, he stopped. The road was full. He could not count them from where he stood. Dozens, at the least. They filled the road and spread into the brush on both sides, and the ones at the back were still partially in shadow where the sun had not reached yet. Organized and still, standing in something that was not quite a line and not quite a formation, but had the feel of both. Orcs, all of them, armed. But the weapons were sheathed, and the hands were visible, and nobody was moving toward anything. They were just there, waiting. Behind him, he heard the 7 come off the porch steps and spread out without being told to. He did not look back. He walked to the gate and opened it and stood in the gap. One figure at the front stepped forward, large even by the standards of what he was looking at. A leader by the look of it, though the veteran could not have said what made that so, only that the others held a half step back, and the space around this one was its own kind of quiet. The figure stopped a few feet from him and knelt. He had not been expecting that. Then, one rank at a time, the rest of them went to their knees. It moved through the crowd in a slow wave, unhurried, and it took longer than he would have thought. He stood in the gate and let it finish. When it was done, the quiet on the road was very complete. He had never heard that many people make that little sound. The leader said something in the Orc tongue, low, formal, the rhythm of something that had been said before and had a shape worn into it from use. The tallest one from the 7 stepped up beside him. "The life debt," they said. "You took 7 of us off those ropes. That's not a small thing in our reckoning. He says the war band is sworn to your protection, until you release them or the debt is paid." The veteran looked at the kneeling rows. He looked at the one beside him. He looked back at the road, all those figures on their knees in the early grey light, waiting. He took a breath. "Tell him there's no room in the house," he said. "The barn will hold some. The rest can use the south field. There's fencing out there that needs work, as if anyone wants something to do with their hands." The tallest one held his gaze for a moment. Then they turned and relayed this in the Orc tongue. Something moved through the kneeling figures. Not laughter, exactly. Something quieter and harder to name. The leader stood. Around them, in order, the rest began to rise. He went back inside. He crossed through the main room and into the kitchen, and as he passed the windowsill, he picked up the stone and turned it once in his hand and set it back down. Not trust, not welcome, but something that had not been there before, in this house or in him. On the first day, the 7 slept. Not all of them, and not all day, but they moved through the house slowly and ate what was left of the bread and cheese from the night before, and did not ask for anything beyond what was already there. Nobody spoke unless spoken to first. The war band in the south field was the same. He could see their fires from the kitchen window at sunrise, 3 or 4 of them, low and steady. They had stayed south of the fence he had pointed to. They had not touched the barn. He noted both of those things and went on with his mourning. The 7 in the house kept mostly to the main room. He gave them space, and they gave him space, and by the middle of the day it had begun to feel like a system of some kind. He spent that day on the east fence line, 3 posts down, wire pulled loose for about 20 feet. He drove the posts back in and strung the wire and moved to the next section without stopping to look back at the house. He did not ask anyone for help. There was enough work to do without having to explain it to anyone first. On the second day, he was at it again. He had been working for about an hour when one of the 7 appeared at the far end of the section he was fixing. Not the tallest one. One of the others, broad through the shoulders and quiet in the way that large people sometimes learn to be in spaces built for smaller ones. They did not ask where to start. They picked up the spare post pounder he had left in the grass and went to work on the next post down. He looked at them once and looked back at his own work. They worked toward each other through the morning. They did not talk. When they met in the middle, the one from the 7 set the post pounder down in the grass and walked back toward the house without a word. He looked at the posts they had set, good and straight, driven deeper than he would have bothered to. He had not asked for any of it. He did not say so. He moved on to the next section. On the 3rd day, he noticed one of the 7 favoring an arm. The right one held slightly away from the body, careful, the way a person moves a thing they are trying not to aggravate. He saw it in the morning and did not say anything about it. That afternoon, he went to the back shelf and took down a tin of salve and folded a clean cloth beside it and set both on the porch step. He did not explain what they were for. He did not watch to see if they were used. He went back inside and found something else to do. When he came out before supper, the tin was on the step, empty. No note, no word. He had not expected one. He picked it up and carried it back inside. That evening he set bowls on the table and went to sit on the floor by the fire, leaving the chairs for them. He did not think about it. He just did it. There was bread from that morning and a pot of beans he had started at noon. It went around, which was not always the case, but was the case tonight. They ate together for the first time, more or less. Not warm yet. Not easy. But they ate, and nobody said anything about it, and that was enough to call it a start. Outside, the war band's fires in the south field were still going. He could see them from the window above the basin. Small lights in the dark, steady. On the 4th day they turned ground. The far north section of the field had been fallow for 2 seasons, long enough that the soil had gone hard, and the weeds had moved in and established themselves as if they owned the place. He had put off getting to it, because there had always been something that needed doing more immediately, and then there had just been him to do it. Now he had more hands available than he was sure what to do with. He started at the north edge with a turning fork. The tallest one from the 7 appeared beside him not long after, no question asked, no direction given, and picked up the other fork from where it leaned against the fence post and started on the next row. They worked south through the morning. It was hard going. The soil came up in heavy clods, and the weeds had roots that went deep and did not want to let go. By the time the sun started to dip, they had turned most of the north section, and the backs of both of them ached. At midday they stopped, and he got water from the well and brought back 2 cups. He set one at the end of the row closest to the tallest one, and kept one for himself. They stood and drank without talking. Then the tallest one looked at the turned ground. "This soil," they said. "What grows here?" "Beans, mostly. Some corn if the season runs long enough, but it's late for corn now." He looked at the fallow section, still ahead of them. "Beans will make it if we get them in this week." The tallest one nodded once and picked up the fork again. That was the whole of it. Neither of them called it anything. They went back to work. On the 5th day, he was on the west fence line when he heard something on the barn roof. He walked around to see. One of the war band was up there, not the leader, just one of the others, working at the place where 2 boards had gone soft and started to bow. They had found the spare lumber in the back of the barn and were fitting a new piece where the old one had failed. They did not look down when he came around the corner. He watched for a moment. He went back to the fence. On the 6th day, the barn roof did not bow in the middle the way it had since the 2nd winter. He did not mention this to anyone. The days settled into a rhythm. More fence along the south line. More ground turned and raked flat. The well rope, which had been fraying at the loop end for longer than he wanted to admit, was replaced with new cord he did not remember buying, left coiled on the post the way he would have left it himself. A hinge on the barn door that had gone stiff got worked loose and oiled somewhere in there. Nobody mentioned any of it. It was just done. That night he stood on the porch for a while before going in. The barn had light in it, low, from inside. The south field had fires, small ones, steady. The fence line to the north was straight where it had not been straight in years. Something was different about the shape of the whole place, the way it sat in the dark, the way the angles of it held. The broken places were not all fixed, not close, but fewer of them caught his eye than before. He stood there for a long time. He did not say anything about it. He just went inside and put the lamp out and went to bed. The house went quiet early that night. The others had gone out to the barn by the time supper was done, or to the field, and the fire in the hearth was the only light left. The tallest one sat by it alone, not doing anything, just sitting, the way people sit when they are not tired enough to sleep, but too tired to do anything else. He had seen that kind of sitting before. He knew what it looked like from the inside. He had gone out to check the gate. It was not something he had always done. It had become a habit somewhere in the last week without him deciding to start it. The gate was latched. The night was cold and clear, and the field was full of low fires and the sound of the war band settling itself. Voices he could not make out, something moving in the dark. He stood for a while, and then he went back inside. He did not go to bed. He sat down on the other side of the hearth. The fire was getting low. He did not put more wood on it. They sat like that for a long time. The fire cracked once and sent up a small spray of sparks that died before they reached the stone. He was not sure who was waiting for what. Maybe nobody was waiting. Maybe it was just 2 people in the same room at the same hour who had not yet found a reason to leave it. He had forgotten what that felt like. Then the tallest one looked toward the windowsill. "That stone," they said. "You pick it up every morning." He was quiet for a long time. "My wife gave it to me," he said. "Before she died. 3rd winter we were here." The tallest one looked at the fire. "We lost people too," they said. "Before the 7 were taken. There was a place we had. Hours for longer than I can remember being told different. Then it wasn't any more. The 7 went ahead to find us a road through the valley. That's when the town got hold of them. He did not say he was sorry. He did not say anything. The ropes weren't just 7 lives, they said. The warband had already lost the rest before that. I understand, he said. Neither of them said anything after that for a long time. The fire went lower. He thought about putting wood on it, and did not. After a time, he reached across and picked up the stone from the sill, turned it over once in his hand. The weight of it was what it always was, which was more than the stone itself accounted for, and less than he had always made of it. He had handled it every day for years, and it had not changed. He had. He set it back down. Not a declaration, not a resolution. Just a thing that shifted, somewhere in the chest, the way a door that has been stuck for a long time will give all at once when the season finally changes. The part of him that had been braced and waiting for the floor to fall through went a little quieter. He did not name it. He just let it be. He hadn't let anything be in a long time. They did not speak again. After a while, the tallest one got up and went out to the barn without a word. The door closed behind them. He sat there until the fire was out. In the dark, he could see the faint glow from the south field through the window, the small fires steady out there. He thought about the stone, and about her, and about the particular way a house holds on to the quiet of someone who is not in it anymore. He thought about all those people in the field with nowhere else to be. He was still sitting there when the cold came up through the floor. Even then, he did not move right away. 3 weeks after the hanging, a rider came up the road. The warband saw him long before he reached the gate. There was no sound from the field, no signal the veteran could hear, but he felt the change in it, the way you feel a shift in weather before the clouds actually arrive. He was on the east fence line when he noticed the stillness. He set his tools down and walked to the gate. The rider was a lone man, not young, with the look of someone who had spent real time on the frontier without ever quite making peace with it. His horse was a good one. He wore a coat that had seen cleaner days but still carried enough official weight to matter. A badge of some kind, or the shape of one. He pulled up a few feet from the gate and looked at the veteran, then past him, at the barn, at the field. "I don't have your name," he said. "That's all right," the veteran said. The official looked at him for a moment and seemed to recalibrate something. "I'm a territorial deputy," he said. "I'm not here to make trouble. I want you to understand that first." "All right," the veteran said. There were 7 Orcs condemned for hanging 3 weeks past, lawfully sentenced by authority of the county seat. They didn't hang. He paused. "You know what I'm telling you?" "I do." "The man who cut those ropes is looking at criminal charges, obstruction of a lawful execution, possibly more, depending on who the 7 are and what they've been about since." He looked at the veteran steadily. Not hostile. Careful. "I'm telling you because I'm required to. I'm also telling you that if you came in voluntarily, answered some questions, things would go easier than the other way." The veteran looked at him. "I saw 7 people roped for a hanging for something that didn't add up to that sentence," he said, "so I cut them down. That's the whole of it." He did not say anything after that. The official waited. The veteran did not continue. The official's eyes moved past him again, past his shoulder, the homestead, the barn, the south field. He was too good at his work not to know that the stillness back there was not ordinary stillness. He was too careful a man to pretend otherwise. He did not say anything about what he saw. He looked back at the veteran. "This isn't settled," he said. "I need to bring it to the marshal. You understand that?" "I understand," the veteran said. The official held his gaze for a moment. Then he turned his horse and rode back the way he had come. The veteran stood at the gate until the road was empty. Then he went inside. That evening he found the tallest one in the main room. The fire was low. He sat down and told them about the rider, who he was, what he said, what the veteran had said back. He did not add anything to it. The tallest one listened without moving. When the veteran finished, the tallest one was quiet for a long time. They did not ask what he planned to do. They did not ask whether he was going to send them away before the marshal came. They did not ask anything. He got up and put more wood on the fire. "They'll send someone else," he said. "More than one man next time." "Yes," they said. Neither of them said anything after that for a while. The fire came back up. Outside, the field held its low, steady fires, the same as they had been every night since the morning of the kneeling. The barn had light in it. The fence along the north line was straight. He thought about what was coming. Then he stopped thinking about it and went to bed. The spokesperson did not ask what kind of man he was. They already knew. 4 days after the deputy rode away, they came back with more men. The war band knew before anyone else. The veteran was at the well when he noticed them moving along the fence line, not running, not forming up, just repositioning the way they sometimes did when something changed on the far road. Quiet about it. He set the bucket down and went to look. The road held 7 riders. At the front of them, a man who sat his saddle like someone who had long since stopped noticing that other people had to wait for him. The war band was already at the fence when the riders reached the gate, spread along it, not pressed against it. Present. Still. The riders pulled up and held. The veteran crossed the yard and opened the gate. The man at the front looked down at him. He had the kind of face that had made decisions for other people for a long time, and had not often heard the word no come back at him. "You'd be the man who cut them down," he said. "That's right," the veteran said. "I'm going to need you to bring them out. The 7. Right now, in front of my men, so we can do this the orderly way." He paused. "I'll also need you to come with us for a hearing. You'll get a fair one. I'm a man who believes in fair hearings." "I'm sure," the veteran said. Something tightened at the corner of the man's mouth. "The law is clear on this," he said. "Those 7 were condemned under lawful authority. What you did that night is a crime, and I am here as a representative of that authority. I can make this difficult for you, or you can make it easy. That is not a threat. That is how these things work." The veteran did not say anything. "You have a homestead here. Land. Whatever you have built up. I would hate to see a man lose all of that over 7 orcs who would not have done the same for him." He looked past the veteran at the barn, at the house, at the yard. "I can guarantee your property is protected if you cooperate. If you don't cooperate, I cannot make that guarantee. Those are the terms." Behind the veteran the door opened. He heard it, but did not turn. Boots on the porch steps. Then gravel. Then they were beside him and behind him, all 7, standing without a word. He had told them to stay inside. They had not. The man on horseback looked at the 7. He looked at the war band along the fence line. Then he looked back at the veteran, and something shifted in how he was holding the reins. One of his men's horses stepped sideways, a short, nervous movement, and the rider pulled hard to stop it. On the other side of the fence, not one orc moved. Not one warrior shifted. They stood with their hands visible and their weapons sheathed, and their eyes on the riders in front of them, and they made no sound at all. The man at the front did the counting that men in his position do. He counted the figures along the fence. He counted his own men. He looked at the veteran. "You understand what you're protecting," he said. It was not quite a question. "I understand what I'm looking at," the veteran said. 7 people who didn't deserve those ropes. You can call that a crime. I've been called worse for doing less. He left it there. The man did not speak right away. He looked at the fence line again, at all those figures standing still in the afternoon light, at the way not one of them had moved through any of this. He was a man who had calculated his way through difficult situations for a long time. He was calculating now. The veteran could see it happening and waited for wherever it came out. The man on horseback finished his counting. He looked at his own men first, at their faces, at the way some of them were sitting their horses, now compared to when they had ridden up. Then he looked at the fence line again. The size of it was one thing. The stillness of it was another. An armed group that large, that quiet for that long, with no word from anyone telling them to hold. That was not a mob. A mob has a sound to it, a restlessness. This had neither. This had a shape, and the shape was something organized and patient, and he did not have a clean answer for it. He looked at the veteran. The veteran had not moved. He was standing in the gate the same way he had been standing there from the start, hands at his sides, nothing on his face that could be read as a dare. He was just there, waiting for whatever came next, without appearing to need it to go any particular way. Something moved across the face of the man in the saddle. Not fear exactly, but the recognition of a kind of ground he had not expected to find here. He had ridden out with numbers on his side and the law at his back, and both of those were still true, and neither of them was enough. That was the calculation that had just come up short, and he was not a man who liked calculations coming up short. He gathered his reins. "This isn't settled," he said. The warmth had gone out of his voice. What was left was flat and careful. "I'm pursuing this through proper legal channels, and you will hear from me again." "That is a promise, not a threat." "I understand," the veteran said. The man looked at him for a moment longer. He did not look at the 7. He did not look at the fence line again. He turned his horse and started back up the road. His men followed. Not fast, deliberately, the way men try to leave a place when they do not want to look like they are leaving it. The warband did not move. They stood along the fence line and watched the riders go, and they did not move until the last horse had gone around the bend in the road, and the sound of hooves had thinned to nothing. Then, quietly and without being told, they began to turn back to what they had been doing. The veteran stayed at the gate a moment longer. The road was empty. The dust the horses had raised was settling back into the ruts. He felt a hand on his shoulder. One hand, briefly, and then it was gone. He did not need to turn to know who it was. He didn't turn. He walked back across the yard and up the porch steps and inside. Some of the 7 were still in the main room. He went past them into the kitchen and stood there, looking at nothing in particular. He sat down. He did not think about the man on the road or about what a threat made through legal channels actually means when it comes from someone with the authority to follow through on it. He knew the deputy had already put him on record. He knew that a problem that walks away from you is not the same thing as a problem that goes away. He had been in enough hard places in his life to know the difference. He thought about it for a while. Then he thought about supper. There were dried beans in a crock and some salt pork left, and enough bread from the morning if no one had finished it. He got up and checked. Nobody had finished it. He built the fire up and put the pot on, and began measuring out the beans. That was the kind of man he was, not someone who stood around, feeling the weight of a thing after the thing was done. Just a man who ate, and who, without thinking much about it, made enough for whoever was in the house. He made enough for all of them. 3 weeks passed, then a month. The antagonist had not come back, at least not yet. The crops were up, the fences held, the barn roof, which had been bowing since the second winter, was sound now, and the well rope was new, and the north section had beans in it that were coming along the way beans do when the ground has been turned right and the season cooperates. The 7 were still there. Some of the war band had moved off the south field and taken up ground past the ridge, close enough to know and far enough to give room. It had happened without anyone arranging it. One day they were in the field, and over the next few days they weren't, and the camp past the ridge was there instead. Nobody mentioned the change. He and the tallest one worked side by side most mornings now. Not every morning. Most. It had stopped feeling like something that required acknowledging. It was just how the morning went. They worked. At midday they stopped, and there was water, and sometimes food. They went back to work. That was the whole of it, and it was enough to call it something, even if neither of them ever had. One evening he came in, and the house was quiet. He stood at the window-sill and looked at the stone. He picked it up. He held it for a while and thought about her. The way he thought about her most evenings now, which had become less like a wound and more like a fact. The way the dark is a fact. The way the cold is. He thought about what she would have made of all of this. The barn full. The field planted. The ridge with its fires at night. He was not sure. She had been a practical woman. She might have approved on practical grounds alone and not said much about the rest. He set the stone down. Not on the sill. On the table. The table where they ate, where the bowls went out every night, where the bread went around. He set it there and looked at it for a moment, and then he went outside. He stood at the gate in the early evening. The light was going. The field lay quiet between the house and the ridge, the last of the sun still on the far slope. There was a rider on the ridge, not anyone he recognized, not the deputy, not the man with the promise of legal channels, just a figure moving along the high line, going somewhere he didn't know, carrying something he couldn't see. Someone on a long road. He watched until the rider went over the far side and was gone. He did not know what they were carrying or where they were going. The world beyond the fence had not finished moving. He had always known that. He just had not expected to be standing at this gate, on this side of it, with a barn full of people, and a field coming up and a stone on the table where it had never been before. When the next part of it started coming, he went back inside. Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe to the channel to watch more stories like this one. Leave a like, it helps the channel a lot. And drop a comment down below. I always read them and use your feedback to make our content better. Thanks so much.